the truth, like the true truth, the undiluted, unsanitized truth, no way it's ever going to come out. You hear people in these, ex-CIA, if that even is a real thing, but the CIA people and others talk about the fact that the truth, like there's just no way it's ever going to come out. If we suddenly clue on to like, hang on a sec, there's some kind of like demiurge thing here that's like controlling us in some kind of malevolent way, then that thing that is obviously more powerful, more intelligent, a higher dimensional being, whatever it is, it's not going to go, you caught me, guys. Sorry. Yes, I've been treating you all like puppets on strings for the millennia. It's probably going to go, okay, this game is screwed. I'm going to have to reset the game. That's probably a really good reason why like the truth would never, ever, ever come out. Probably because it means everything would end. Oh, dude, exactly. Like the idea that, yeah, we looked into, psi abilities, MKUltra, and then we just thought we'd stop. Like, please. Obviously, that stuff never stopped. It probably just got deeper and more intricate and probably even more like unfathomable to most people. What I think could be like a real answer for disclosure, and maybe it's just a bit of a theory for all of this, but I think what makes a lot of sense is that
given that you are invested in it and we are in this super novel time, I mean, I'm sorry, audience, if you're getting tired of hearing me bring up disclosure and what's going on right now, but it has to be talked about. Particularly, I think it's interesting to talk about with people who've been in this realm for a long time and have been like chewing on these questions and this whole idea of disclosure for a long time. But where is your psyche right now in terms of what you think is going on with this latest promise of disclosure, the documents that have been dropped so far? um, what do you think is going on?
I would say a year ago, about this time in 2025, I was at like peak hype of like, this is happening. It's all coming out. Everyone's going to be going, man, they were right. Disclosure's real. Aliens are real. It's all coming out. I feel like since that point, like sort of April, May last year, it's just been like a bit of a slow erosion of like faith and any kind of conviction that the government led, like the hearings and the whistleblowers and all these kind of things that we see is actually going to lead to anything of substance and or like honesty. So, and that's not to call out all of those people and those hearings and stuff like that. I'm sure there are good actors involved in those, and there's probably some bad ones as well. But it just feels like, at least I personally feel like the conversation seems to just sort of go around in circles, but each circle looks a little bit different than the last. But again, if you kind of zoom out on it, it does just feel like the same kind of thing going around and round and not really going anywhere. However, I just want to say it is easy to get very frustrated with it. Like UFO fatigue is like a real thing, right? And I think we all feel it at times and we've all been through it. To caveat that, I do want to say if we zoom out even further and go 10, 20 years ago, the conversation is a lot more progressed, which is a great thing, 100%. But I think the one thing that really makes me hold this bit of skepticism about it all is the fact that there's been sort of no accountability for the last 80 years. Like, why now? Why is it suddenly in the conversation without acknowledging the history of like, why was it covered up? What's happened between now and then? It just kind of seems to be this sudden, like, oh, yeah, it seems like there's something in the sky. It's like, well, people have been saying that for a long time and they've been ridiculed and whatnot. So I think that's why I feel a bit unsure about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no way to not feel unsure about, yes, the very, particular acute example of what's going on now with, government push disclosure and promise disclosure. And, uh the is it, is it what wait, I forgot the URL. It's not ufos.gov. It's
Oh, it's
Department of War,
it's war.gov/UFOs.
war.gov slash
Yeah,
UFOs. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Like,
A billion visits apparently it's had.
yeah. Like, for one, I don't know if I believe that. Two, because it's not easy to dig through, and it's not like particularly that novel. At least from what I saw, there was nothing in there that really, shook me or seemed particularly convincing to me. I think you probably did a deeper dive, I'm guessing, into whatever they dropped on that site than I did, because I was actually driving across the country at the time, and I was popping in and out, and then I was seeing the things that started getting a lot of coverage, the Star UFO, a couple of the documents and stuff like that. Um, but what, if anything, in there actually piqued your wonder whiskers up?
Nothing was really massive or groundbreaking for me. Okay, there was just again a lot of FLIR videos, a lot of sort of grainy, strange little white dots making little maneuvers
Mm,
on the screen. Some of which were undoubtedly, it's like, okay, well, I can't identify that because I don't know what could move that way or at that speed. But it's still, I think, for people like us that have been interested in this stuff for a while now, we're just like yearning for something of more substance than that. Like we've had the Tic Tac videos, we've had these things for over nearly 10 years now. And I think we just want something that feels a little bit more yeah, substantial. I think, and people are debunking that Star video, saying it's a
yeah.
flare. Maybe it is, I'm not sure. What I thought was interesting is the NASA photos from like the moon landings.
Yes.
Like they were being followed by strange objects, and there was these three like blue lights off the horizon of the moon. I think stuff like that is interesting, but again, that makes me ask the question of like, well, some of these Apollo astronauts are still alive, and other astronauts have spoken out on, like Gordon Cooper, for example. He has some incredible stories about UFOs chasing them in a fighter jet, things like that. I feel like, why aren't these people part of this release? Like, why isn't their testimony, their verbal on camera testimony being included? Because I feel like that puts a bit more, I don't know, a bit more veracity on what's being released. I don't like the fact that it feels like the files have been released with no really with no figure attached to it as like, I'm leading this. Like, if you
Yeah,
have
no
questions,
guidance.
if you have answers, like, I'm here to kind of help deliver this knowledge and help you digest it. It's kind of like the Epstein files, where they've just kind of put it in a zip file, put it on the cloud, and been like, have at it, good luck. And it just kind of creates all of these more questions than answers. And then it's just kind of like radio silence until the next drop, I guess. It just, I don't know, the vagueness of it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah. What actually is the Gordon Cooper story? I don't know that.
So he has a story about, I think it's in like 1953, I reckon, or it's like mid 50s, where
Mm,
he's in a jet, and he's either, I believe his words are that he's chasing them, but there is a formation. He's flying in formation, and he says there is a formation of, I believe he actually uses the term flying saucers. So, like, circular objects way above them, like closer to like 70, 60,000. He said at that time, our jets couldn't even get up that high. That's how I knew. They were like, what the hell is that? And they were going way faster. And he basically was like tailing them from below. I'm pretty sure it was over Berlin or somewhere in Europe, in the
mm,
mid 50s, which is interesting, in
yes.
Germany. So yeah, and I think he has a couple of other stories, maybe not as firsthand as that, but like Edgar Mitchell, many of these astronauts are like deeply interested in extraterrestrial life and the idea that we should really be trying to like expand our awareness and become comfortable with these ideas. So it's like,
Yeah,
and some of them are alive. So it's like, why get these people up there? This is their time to say, what, this is real. It just feels weird that they're
yeah.
not included in that.
Yeah, Edgar Mitchell was a particularly special case, of course, because he became, I think he already was obsessed with psi and, just spent his life basically trying to understand human consciousness and what capacities human consciousness had. But, bro, the 1950s, that's a time period I want to do a deeper dive into, because I'm going through the second Secret Machines book right now, like that Lavenda wrote
Hmm.
or co wrote. And he starts out that, have you read it?
That's Man. I haven't read Man.
That's War.
Oh yeah, I think that's the third one, isn't it? War, God, Man, War. I think
I
that's
think
how it
it's
goes.
whatever. It's
Whatever.
I think let me just look. Let me just look. I wanna
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um,
Um, I've read Gods,
yeah, yeah, me too.
which is the first one.
That's
Yeah.
yes. And man, it's crazy. Um, Okay, hold on 1 second. Oh, it is the third one. You're right. Yeah. So whatever. I jumped to that one, I guess. Um, but yeah, he opens up this book with an exhaustive journalistic deep dive of a who's who of these big, Nazi figures. Like which one of them's which ones. Sorry, it's late for me. Which of them went to the US as part of Paperclip? Which of them fled to South America? Which of them just kind of disappeared into the wind and it's not known whether they lived or survived? He deep dives the some of the corporations and money trail type stuff to really try to lay out whether or not it's plausible that there was a relatively um, powerful effort to continue some of this research. And I haven't gotten to the point yet where he really lays out his answer. But I know from reading bits and pieces and talking to other people that he eventually kind of surmises that maybe there was a continuation of the research, particularly a more kind of esoteric aerospace engineering. And there may have been some kind of fusion between esotericism, the occult, and actual propulsion. And what we're seeing, particularly when UFOs first started appearing with like Kenneth Arnold and all these people, is we may have actually been seeing these things flying around for the first time. And he also hypothesizes that that's why they crash, because it would make way less sense for there to be this higher extraterrestrial civilization or whatever kind of super advanced civilization that's having their craft crash. But it would make way more sense if it's some weird experimental occult aircraft that has just been invented or something like that. So I did a terrible job of describing it, but it's something along those lines. And it seems like in the 1950s in particular, there's just so many different flaps and examples of like really weird aircraft being spotted by really credible people. So yeah, I got to do a deeper dive into that for sure.
Yeah, dude, 100%. And there's that one quote that's always stuck with me is Carl Nell saying esotericism
Hmm.
drives scientific innovation.
Yes,
And
dude.
I definitely think you're like that's tracks. Like what you're saying there absolutely tracks. And it does seem like the longer, no matter what angle you come into the UFO topic at, if you spend enough time, it kind of seems to like all funnel down to like the occult and like magic with a K per se.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, man. And that theory does make a lot more sense that it's actually ours rather than something super high tech.
Yeah. We're given that, or using that as a jumping off point, what do you what is your current hypothesis as to what is going on? Like, is there any particular established hypothesis that you gravitate toward?
I think at the moment, I feel like the one thing that I can't help but think about and look past and not look past is the fact that, the F-117 Nighthawk, which is this like super cool looking, like black
Mhm.
stealth fighter, like triangular craft. If you saw this thing from below, even some people today who like don't know anything about aerospace, I reckon if they saw that plane from below, they would be like, "Holy shit, that's a UFO!" Because it from
Yeah.
below, it literally just looks like a chevron, just like a triangle. Um, and that plane, I believe, was like first made public in the 80s. So I think it was flying stealth missions in the 70s. And it looks super high tech from the outside, but if you look at the cockpit, you can tell it's from like the 70s. Like it's super like rudimentary and kind of crude on the inside.
Mhm.
But that's kind of like the last stealth fighter advanced airplane that we've really ever been shown. And again, that was I think made public in the 80s. So, we're like 40 odd years down the line now. We've had AI boom, we've had all of this crazy technology, just hockey stick if we were to look at it on like a line graph. Yet it's just like radio silence when it comes to like innovation in the military and aerospace. So people see the Tic Tac. Some people claim that that's made by Lockheed Martin. I don't know if it's made by Lockheed Martin, but it wouldn't surprise me if they had something like that or equivalent to that. So I believe that there is other life forms, and I think that they probably are here. They probably live alongside us, and probably have maybe longer than we have. Maybe they play a part in our evolution and why we're here. I'm not sure, but I do feel like a lot of it is probably super secret technology that we have that will it's too much of a risk to have it out in the public because there's spies, there's espionage, and they're probably too worried that if this gets in the wrong hands, it could be over for them. Because if all this stuff is real, it is kind of like mutually assured destruction, like instant annihilation if it's weaponized. So in one way, I get it. A lot of people get upset that why don't we have the free energy? Why don't we get the UFOs? And like I get that for sure. I mean, non-renewable energy and the monetary system sucks for sure. But also, like at the same time, it's like, well, if there really is bad people in the world and people are spying on each other, what would the world look like if someone bad did get that technology? Probably
Mhm.
wouldn't be good. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, I guess. But I do kind of lean to the fact that a lot of it, a lot of the physical, I think,
Yes.
is ours. But I really believe that there is a non-physical realm that we can sort of interact with that probably is through consciousness and it's with our minds that we have the ability to connect with it. I do believe that.
Hey, friends, quick announcement. I am absolutely tickled to be joining my brother Chris Ramsey on his It's Probably Nothing tour. I will be on two dates, June 13th in Cleveland, Ohio, and on the 14th in Detroit. It's probably nothing.com for details and tickets. I need Wonder Dippers in the audience yelling random esoteric shit. Do it. Are you subbed? Have you fed the algorithm? Have you joined up on the members section or at patreon.com/third eye drops? We've got new transmissions and more. Much love.
But I really believe that there is a non-physical realm that we can sort of interact with that probably is through consciousness and it's with our minds that we have the ability to connect with it. I do believe that.
Yeah, and as you probably know, that's where I think the chips fall as well. Is that there's too many potentials for untrained eyes, or things you think you saw, or anomalies of some sort being labeled as UFOs. Like there's too many opportunities for that to happen, for that not to be a huge segment of it. But as you said, you can fairly quickly, particularly depending on what molecules you have access to, or what practices you do, like you can pretty quickly alter your consciousness in a way that makes you realize that you're living in some kind of sensory matrix, for lack of a better term. And this is, by the way, what my talk at Contact is going to be about, is essentially sort of starting with Plato's cave and then going from Plato's cave to what did people within that lineage, who were trained not just through the work of Plato, but lived in this cultural um, sort of milieu, what did they think about reality, and how did they get in touch with this other realm? So I kind of start there, and then I go into their whole metaphysical understanding, what beings they believed lived in this realm, um, how those beings manifested. And this is where it starts to get interesting, because the way they manifest is as qualities of light. So it sounds very much like orb appearances, or, weird sort of um, amorphous but intelligent things manifesting during like CE5, or during, Bledsoe esque sky watches and stuff like that. And then from there, I go into kind of like modern ufologists whose minds changed from either thinking, there's nothing to this whatsoever, um, or from nuts and bolts to, no, whatever's going on is something esoteric and probably not physical and has something to do with the psyche. And then at the end, I attempt to try to cobble together half responsibly who within the military industrial complex and the intelligence agencies also seems to think this way, because there are enough really intriguing nuggets to, like, that. I actually have that quote from Nell and a few other things from Nell in the talk too. And there's a lot, man, and there's a lot more that's harder to substantiate, but it seems likely. Like, for instance, like there's so much with McCaslin that it's like right there, but you can't like it's speculative, you know?
Mm,
It's
mm,
like we know up to a point that he must have, for instance, sort of co-signed the general thesis of secret machines because he was one of the major advisors. DeLong said he was a very important man, quote unquote, that helped him assemble uh, uh, his team or whatever, his advisory team. But you can't necessarily attribute anything to him directly, so it's hard to know, you know,
yeah,
where he stood in a lot of this stuff. But even if you take him out, man, there's a lot of interesting people and there's a lot of interesting instances that it's not even an inference or a reach. It's direct. It's them directly talking about this shit. So
mm.
it's definitely out there.
Yeah, I think I also have I guess a third theory that could maybe even like encapsulate the other two and just be what's actually going on. I don't know, but I think you are as well. But I'm a big believer that we create our reality with our mind. Like our thoughts, basically, are the spawn point of the experience that we kind of have in the world. And I wonder, I guess if you do the inner work, you begin to realize that you have a conscious decision over those thoughts. Every thought, every emotion, every reaction, right? It's like you have a choice on what you do. So then you start to realize like you can kind of create your reality in some sense
Mhm.
by consciously making those decisions. What I wonder is something like that happening on a wider scale collectively, and somehow like ideas are fed into us either subconsciously, like, I don't know, through movies. That's a bit of a cliche example, but maybe in other deeper ways that we don't even understand. And that without us really knowing, like our thoughts are being kind of engineered and steered. And collectively, we are kind of like manifesting some of these things either physically and like the craft itself, that now that we all believe in it, we're starting to see it, or even just like the collective agreement is kind of defining something that actually isn't real, but we've kind of been,
Mhm.
you know, I don't want to say like MKUltra light, but in a way it kind of is that, but just gently been brain massaged into thinking a certain way. And now that kind of becomes the world that we live in. And we don't even realize that that's been intentionally done to us. So I think
Yeah.
that's also a third option on the table for all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it gets so solipsistic and potentially schizo really quickly, but
Perfect.
I agree, like, up to a point, but I have a lot of issues with the sort of, like, standard new age kinda manifestation take, but I do think that there is something like a collective unconscious, and there's, like, this weird intermediary flow of ideas and experiences and psychical material flowing in and out of the conscious and unconscious all the time. And like you can get I think you get glimpses of this every night, right? Like when you're dreaming, when you get inspiration. Um and to get to the really schizo part, have you ever watched any like Andrew Gallimore interviews?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So for people that don't know Andrew Gallimore, he's this neuroscientist. He's really become one of the foremost mouthpieces of DMT. He's written a few different books, but one of the things that he surmises is that thoughts could be essentially extraterrestrial, or there could be beings that are so small or so, you know, not like almost like they've ascended the physical form and they live in this kind of either digital ether or informational ether or technological ether or spiritual ether, and maybe they're just like swimming around in our own psyches, incepting us or inspiring us or whatever, glomming onto us like uh you know dim- demonic parasites or whatever. So yeah, that gets schizo really really quickly, but I've definitely also had that idea that you're pointing to, that there could be something to this sort of agreed upon cultural notion of reality. Like it's like things to an extent are the way they are because we all believe that's how they
Mm.
are.
Yeah, we
And I've thought
define it.
about, yeah, I've thought about, in ancient cultures where seemingly everyone was talking to gods, everyone was talking to spiritual entities. It seemed very not metaphorical. And maybe that has something to do with that because they were all living in a fairly isolated pocket of people. and they were all sharing this cultural language, ritualistic language, this way of being, that maybe that gave them a different agreed upon view of reality that wasn't just their imagination, but that it really was manifesting it like an egregore or something, you know? Like maybe that's true. I don't know.
Mm. One thing that I've found really interesting because I've been traveling for the last 6 months and mainly through Southeast Asia. And when I was in specifically Vietnam, like I began to really notice it kind of started with the fact that I noticed that their language is not like a one-to-one translation to English.
Mm,
Like a lot of languages are like English and Spanish, you can kind of like, they kind of go one-to-one in a way. Vietnamese is like extremely different and complex. It's just like a different, almost like a different style of putting language together. Like it just works differently. And I'm sure you've probably heard people talk about the idea that, like language is kind of like the sort of like the medium of our experience in reality because it's what defines everything that we understand, right? So if your language is inherently different, it's like it's not a one to one to English. It's like it's something else. It works differently. I think that and the reason why I started thinking about these things in Vietnam is because I just noticed, like, from talking to some of the people who could speak a bit of English, because my dad is over there, so I did get to meet a few locals.
hmm,
Just the way that they the way that they think about things, the way that they behave and act, the things that they care about. It's like it's so different over there, and
hmm,
obviously cultures are different. But I began to wonder because of the language. It's like it's almost like that they have a different set of definitions and understandings. So the way that they act and feel, it's just different. And it's hard to really put your thumb on like what it actually is. And obviously this is just my own theory, but that really began to convince me of like how powerful our language is. And that, I don't know if you know Jordan Maxwell, like he talks a lot about like etymology and like the, words and spelling is like
I
casting
know the
spells.
name. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, he's in deep. He's in deep in, like,
I'll
the
look him up.
Hollywood occult stuff. He's interesting. He's very interesting. But I think David Icke got a lot of his work from Jordan Maxwell's research. But, he goes deep into that stuff and
Oh
about
yeah.
language and, yeah, how about, words are basically casting spells, and those spells create the reality. It's like it's almost like magic. When you speak, you're kind of speaking it into existence. And again, I guess that comes back to, like, you agree on upon definitions and now it is. So
Yeah.
that's just a really interesting experience I had while I was in Vietnam and really made me think a little bit deeper about how powerful our words are. And to come back to Carnell, I think he even said something about that, about language in that same speech at Rice
Yes.
University. He says something that it's like it's a barrier. Like our the amount of words in our language is like shackles because to understand more, we need to be able to expand our language because it's like it's a limitation.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very Terrence McKennian as well. He definitely would talk about limitations of language, and I always love when it's the people who are like the best wordsmiths who can alchemize like the most ridiculous turns of phrases on the fly. And McKenna was one of these people. Yet he would also readily admit that language is limiting, like you're
Mm,
saying. And it's occurring to me now that if you think about, one of the core basic lessons of Plato's cave is essentially that, the cave is our physical senses, essentially like our normal everyday outward looking perception. And if that's a prison, the very next layer of prison would be your language, because it's one of the most basic psychotechnologies you have. You're using it constantly, you're thinking in linguistic terms constantly. Anytime you're interfacing with another person, it's through mouth noises, and that has become so normal. But I don't think you realize how much it runs your entire psyche and way of looking at the world until the very rare occasions where you choose to isolate yourself and you stop talking for a long period of time. And I'm not saying I do this regularly, I should do it more, but it's definitely a kind of mud. It's a kind of psychical mud that is just so caked onto the way that we do everything that it almost feels like it's just part of us and who we are, but it's not. It's like a weird, um,
Do you mean the like language speaking is the
yeah,
mud?
language.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and well, it's part of the mud. I think the sensory world in general is all a kind of mud. You know, like if there
Mm.
is a higher realm, right? This is making it sound like I'm saying like, "Oh, this world is like a malevolent prison," and I'm not exactly saying that, but I am saying if there is a higher reality that is non-physical, well, clearly the trappings of the physical then would be kinds of sort of, um well, like various mystics talk about this. Like Plotinus would talk about, like if you essentially you want to ascend toward the one, or you want to ascend toward the higher realm, you need to like quote unquote remove the stains of the outside world. And he doesn't say how to do that, but
They
various
never do.
points in his right, yeah,
They ne
yeah, yeah. But at various points, he does basically almost describe meditation and like isolating
Mhm.
yourself, sitting down, just being still, closing your eyes. Unfortunately, it gives no technique, but it seems like that's what he's saying is if you really want to understand, like the very first thing you need to do is remove sensory input for a fairly long period of time. And I think that's also why at so many retreats, right? They're silent. Like you
Yeah.
don't talk. So there's something to that for sure.
What's your thoughts on, like, I guess, have you heard of people talk about the conscious like, world being a consciousness simulator? We're sort of here to sort of grow and, like, through experience. Do you lean like, how do you feel about that? I guess I'm asking because yeah, through my travels, obviously, I'm traveling solo for these 6 months. So, a lot of introspection happens. And I guess one thing I've been thinking about is we're all very invested in like finding the answers. Like, we're all like morbidly obsessed with the, esotericism and UFOs and curiosities and what's out there. Why are we here? All of these like
Mhm,
really, really deep questions. And I think it was, I think it, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Alan Watts that I was listening to, and he says, the point of the dance is not to finish dancing; it's to enjoy the dance. That's why you do it. It's not about what happens at the end of the dance.
mhm.
So, and that really just kind of stuck with me, and it made me not start like second guessing everything I'm doing, but maybe begin to think about like a more balanced approach of like maybe we are literally like we all want to fix all the problems in the world and we want peace and whatever, but we all sort of agree that we sort of grow spiritually through like trauma to a degree, right? It's usually those harder times that kind of make us go inward and become a bit of a better person, hopefully. Hopefully. So it makes me wonder, like maybe the point isn't to try and like erase all the evil in the world and do all of this. It's about learning how to like coexist alongside it and just sort of grow spiritually. Like maybe that is the point. Because when you listen to like near death experiences and even some, DMT trips, which, you could say are maybe very similar. I've never done it. When you do cross over, even if it's temporary and you come back, you do seem to get a sense of like, oh, that's right. It was all that I'm back home now. I was just doing that thing for a little while. Everything's all
Mhm.
good. Everything's infinite. I love everyone. Everyone loves me. This is amazing. Like, why was I so worried about all that bullshit? So it feels like you're gonna get that answer anyway. You're gonna kind of get that sense of figuring it all out one day. So it's like, should I just be enjoying the dance, or should I, am I like wasting time trying to figure out the
Mhm.
point of the dance? So these are some of the questions that I've had, and I was curious what you think about the idea of like we are just here to experience rather than find the answers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love Alan Watts, and to a degree, I totally agree with him that there's clearly some if you're a human, do the human thing, right? Like
Mm,
don't you could argue that maybe you're not meant to transcend while you're in this body, and there's plenty of time for that later. But I also think it's sort of ironic coming from someone like Alan Watts, because clearly he spent so much time like studying theology and philosophy, and he was a very spiritual man in and of his himself, and also had a lot of like social sorts of like questionable behaviors and things that he did. So I love Alan Watts for sure, but I also I don't know. I guess I don't. That's sort of like Taoist, it's all everything's all great. I in some ways I do agree with that, and in some ways I also feel like it feels like a little bit of a cop out, you know? Because and it all depends on what you where you place your chips in terms of what you think this reality is, right? If it is a school, then okay, we're here to learn. If it's a some kind of like Gnostic demiurgic prison, then we need to get the fuck out of here. Like we need to like figure out
Yeah.
how to escape.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and if it's like something in the middle, like for a Platonist or a Hermeticist, it's not evil. It's sort of this um, naturally occurring thing, but you're kind of living down at the bottom of creation essentially. Like you somehow some part of your higher self or soul has either fallen here or wound up here, and there's a better way for you to be. Most of them seem to think that. There are some actually though that believe that a human soul is sort of like a soul is sort of this timeless thing, like a number or something. It doesn't change. So you actually can't escape the human experience. You just get to reincarnate as a human over and over and over again. So the
Mm.
best you can do is sort of become more aware through your incarnations, and then you can like help other people become aware as well. So the thing is like I don't know which one of those is right. I know which ones I gravitate toward and what I hope is right and what makes more sense to me. But that's my annoying nuanced answer, you know? This is like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, so
Well, the one thing
it's
that's
hard to say.
worrying, the one thing that I worry about is that, you said if it's a Gnostic demiurgic prison, that we should all try and get out of here. The one thing that I think about with that is like a lot of the tech billionaires are kind of like, we need to get out of here. And like that makes me a bit like, okay, what do you know? Like why you maybe it's like a cataclysm or something, or they're just like doom preppers. I don't know. But that part does worry me. For reincarnating, I've heard a lot of people say when it comes to the phenomenon that the big secret is about like what happens after death, like the big thing
Yeah,
that they don't want you to know. It's like to do with the afterlife. And I'll give you a little bit of a schizo theory rant here. One
please.
thing that I've thought about is that if it's true, like you said, that we do just reincarnate over and over. Excuse me, sorry, it's early here. If we do reincarnate early over and over, that would take away the fragility of our life. And I think it could cause, if people knew that it doesn't matter what happens, you're just going to come back anyway. I think people would start to become like way more reckless. Like it could become harder to have like a civilized world because people know that there's sort of no consequences in a way because it's just probably going to feel like you go to sleep and then you pop back in. Like, this is a very vague overview, but you sort of get the idea of what I'm saying.
Yeah,
The reason why I think that this is actually a valid theory is because if you look at what some people would call the incoming new world order that has seemingly been rolling out a staged plan from like World War One to instill power, create create chaos, and destabilize certain areas of the world to impose their own sort of control, right? And it seems like that's just kind of slowly happening all over the place until this cabal or whatever you want to call them has total control. The reason why that lends a lot of credence to the idea that we reincarnate over and over, and some people know that, is because what I can't imagine is who would be so invested into such a tyrannical, like, what feels like an evil plan that spans generations. Like the people who planned this thing in the late 1800s, ever since this really started to roll out and the three planned wars began, they would have known they're never going to live to see the end of that. And their sons and daughters have probably been born, and they've maybe listened to their parents and continued on the Rothschild thing, the family thing, and they're going to serve their whole lives, and they're not going to see it come to fruition either. So, like, what could possess someone to be so all in on what seems like such a destructive, tyrannical plan that they're never even going to see the fruits of their labor? And could it be that the elites know that, like, it doesn't matter because if you do this, like you're going to come back anyway, and we're playing the long game, that we're
Mhm.
trying to establish control over generations, because we will remain in control because we're all coming back, but some of
Yeah.
us, but no one else knows about it, and that's how it functions. That's my
Yeah.
schizo theory. I like it. Don't know if it's true, but it's something I do think about sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's one possibility for sure. And for me, again, like I can come up with one very parsimonious, one very sort of, you know, practical reason why, and I can also come up with like the most conspiratorial, crazy explanation. Not even crazy, but conspiratorial, dark, metaphysical reason why is because, and obviously I'm sure you've seen some of this stuff going around, like literal documents going around. There's one that somebody sent me, um, actually, an esoteric friend of mine who's very, very smart, and he seemed pretty convinced that yes, things like this are the case. Um, Essentially, that there are certain groups of people that go back hundreds, if not thousands, of years to some sort of tie-in with some kind of like dark entity or some kind of demonic entity or whatever, and they're essentially by blood forced to be the puppets of this thing forever. Like they're just stuck in some kind of weird communion where they're connected to this dark demonic thing. And that's why the most insane, unimaginable, Epstein-esque shit is going on in the world, because they're playing by a totally different set of rules for serving like some kind of master that's unimaginably horrific. So that's like the dark conspiratorial version. And then like just like the probably the most likely mundane version is they're just doing what they think is right. Like we're sitting here from our
Mm,
vantage point
mm,
looking at what they're doing and
yeah,
being like, "What the hell? Like how the fuck can you think this is the way you
yes,
should conduct yourself and what you should work toward?" But if we actually sat down and spoke with them, maybe it wouldn't be as crazy as it
yeah,
looks like from the 50-yard line. And it's weird, man, because I know some people that know some people who are very disliked publicly, like very powerful people. I like people I don't know personally. Um, but then when you talk to them about these people, they're like, yeah, he's not a bad guy. Like if you sat down and talked to him, you'd see, so I don't know.
yeah, dude. I'll comment on both of those. With that one, I've actually said something similar on the channel before, that like these people who we not look up to in a in that kind of way, but at the top, at the elites, whatever, they're like all human perspective is limited, right? Like we can only see like the people around us, and and the further away from the people that we're close to, the more like our ability to like empathize kind of erodes. It's kind of like we have this something we can only we're only meant to be in tribes, right? That's how we started. We only just had a limited small group of people, and that's sort of what we're used to. Now it's like the internet, global, everything's connected, but it's like impossible to stretch like your empathy and understanding out to the entire world. You can only really contain it to what is in your little sphere, right? So I
Yeah.
agree. I agree with that. That these people within their sphere, they're just trying to do their best. But when you take that decision and you kind of run it down the pyramid all the way down here, by the time that decision falls to the bottom of the pyramid, it's so horrific and destructive. But their ability to understand and empathize is just like that. That got cut off like 20 levels ago.
Mhm.
They got no clue or feeling, and they never will, because they're just not in that world. Um, and that's why I always find it weird. Like, I don't know if you saw the other day, there was a video of like the king going like approving digital ID, and he's going like, "Yes, we will get the digital IDs coming out," and he's like adorned in gold with this crown, and I was just like, "Do you realize how out of touch and like bad this video looks?" Like this
Wait,
guy,
who is this?
the king of England.
Oh, the King of England. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
the King of England, like basically speaking of like his approval of digital ID, and he's literally doing so like, I'm not even exaggerating. He's like on a throne wearing a crown with like some furry thing, and like literally a wall of gold and jewels behind him. Like it's
Yeah,
fucked up. It's kind of like you don't realize how like 98% of the world looks at this video. Like it's fucking horrific. Um, so that's an example of, I think, understanding and empathy failing to kind of expand so
yeah.
far. On the other side of it, the more schizo theory of what could be going on. I've thought about that as well. Again, because I think trying to understand is the key, and it's very easy to assume that everyone's just a Baal worshipping horrible person, and there probably are some freaks like that in the world, 100%. But I do wonder, like, what could be the other side of that? Like, could there be a way that these are normal people just trying to do their best, and maybe they know something that we don't, or whatever? What could that be? Because human sacrifice is it's not just an Epstein thing. It's not just a postmodern like Satanism fetish and trend. It runs throughout history, all different
Right.
cultures, all around the world. Obviously, like the Mayans, Aztec, like that one is probably most well known, but also like Pacific Islanders, like Maoris, Samoan, like back in their history, they all did that
Right.
kind of stuff as well. Africans, it's everywhere. So was everyone just killing each other in some kind of like spiritual delusion for thousands of years, or like do people do these things because it actually works? Like it actually
Yeah.
has some kind of effect, and maybe what if this is when it gets really dark? Is that the demiurge or whatever it is that controls our world requires something like this. It's like a
Yeah.
required sacrifice that needs to be offered, and if it is not, then like chaos will ensue, the world gets wiped out or something like that. Like it's like a tax. We pay
Yep.
tax on our wage. Maybe we have to pay tax as a society. Like this is super dark and it's just a theory, but
Yeah.
it's like how could I try and look at what's happening here in a realistic but positive lens? And realistically, people have been doing it for thousands of years, so there's probably something to it. Why? Well, maybe there is a requirement that we need to pay some kind of tax to some sort of demiurge.
Yeah. Yeah, well, first of all, I'm on team make the Demiurge good again and make the Demiurge not evil again because the original Demiurge was just the, creative consciousness of Plato's Timaeus, and that made the cosmos, basically, and then way later, you get the evil version of the Demiurge. But that said, yeah, man, the idea that there just may be some metaphysical law underpinning reality, that there is some kind of compensation that we can't understand, like some kind of spiritual compensation that occurs when you do that. Like maybe that's just a real thing. And that is one of the
Mm,
most terrifying
yeah.
possibilities, that maybe the spirituality, the exoteric spirituality that we're all practicing is essentially like, what if, and I'm sorry to anybody I offend with this, but what if that's just sheep religion? And the real way that this stuff works is through things like that. Like maybe it is. And that's a scary possibility. And what's amazing, um, not amazing like it's wonderful, but amazing like it's just fascinating, is that within a lot of these esoteric lineages that I'm super into, they debate about this. Like there are people like that Plotinus guy, and one of his students, they argue against the idea of sacrifice vehemently. They're more like yogis, they're like vegetarians, they don't they don't get married, they straight up devote their lives to wisdom and contemplation and being philosophically pure. And then there are these more like magical type practitioners who, are on the same page as all of these cultures, not on human sacrifice, but on like animal sacrifice was incredibly pervasive. Egyptians,
Mm,
Greeks, like you could just go down the line. Everybody did animal sacrifice. Everybody. Um, but they were against animal sacrifice, and then some of them were like, no, no, you don't understand. There's something that occurs when you do this properly that is necessary, and from a modern standpoint too, think about the unbelievable numbers of animals we're consuming all the time thoughtlessly. Would it really be so bad if we sacrifice them instead of, just mindlessly doing cattle holocausts every day? Like, is that
mm,
is that so much worse? I feel like if anything, maybe that would wake us up to the gravity of what we're doing more. Like
mm.
if you had to if you made me do it, I'd be like, I don't think I'm gonna eat meat. I think I'm just gonna
Yeah.
be a vegetarian.
Well,
Um,
there's like I'm pretty sure. Well, there's halal meat, which is essentially like
yeah,
the religious sacrifice in
true.
Islam. There is like kosher meat, so like
Yeah.
and the Kapporos festival, like the Jews will sacrifice the chickens to atone for their sins. And I've even seen God, what's her name? I think it was Iggy Azalea had like
Hmm.
like an old video that she like put up as just like an Instagram story where she's like, witches doing witchy things, got to clean out my little chamber. And it was like this little like iron box that was like thickly coated with blood and feathers. And that was where
Whoa.
yeah, and she just like posted this as an Instagram story. This was like a while ago, but it kind of resurfaced and it was just like, oh yeah, okay, just people in this is Hollywood, baby. This is what they do. Like you see so much of this creepy, weird shit in Hollywood. And again, it's like yes, to us, it's creepy and weird, and I can't really empathize or understand it. But that doesn't mean that it's not actually serving like a function and that it's not real. And that is
Yeah.
what is kind of like that's like the scariest part about it. But I want to say, I don't necessarily look, I don't know if there is like something that requires human or animal sacrifice for favor or whatever. I don't know. But I really do. What I do believe if that is happening, that it's not something that we can't change. That like I actually believe that it's corny and cliche as it sounds. That like love is the answer, and I actually had a mushroom experience between the last time I've spoken to you that was
Oh
far
yeah.
more powerful than I had intended
Hmm.
than I was expecting. So this is only like a month ago when I was in Bangkok and I was just going out to have a couple of beers, and I thought, and I knew because that they have little weed shops set up in Bangkok, and I went to my local one just to get some gummies. And when I finished purchasing, he was just like, "Oh, here's the secret menu as well if you want to take a look at that." And that had like the DMT and the LSD and all that kind of
Whoa.
stuff. Yeah, yeah, just in the shop, man. And those mushrooms on there. I was like, oh yeah, I could, I might come back grab some mushrooms. So when I was going out for some beers, I was like, you know what, I might just get like a gram and just have like a little bit or something. I don't know, just a little bit for a little buzz. Ended up, the dude was like, oh, you should lemon tech it. Like you should get this like little lemon drink. And I'll grind up the mushroom for you, put it in there. It'll make it hit harder. And I was like, oh yeah, I've heard about that. I'll try it. At this point, I feel like I'd forgotten that I only wanted to just have like a little buzz and like that just kind of escaped me. It was only 1 gram, so I still wasn't expecting too
Right.
much. Did the gram in the lemon tech, drank it, and pretty quickly, so I was out in Bangkok. Pretty quickly, I was like, "Oh, yeah, starting to come on. It's all good. I'm okay." Getting a little bit like, my perception's starting to warp a little bit. I was okay, but then I was starting to think like, I think if this gets any stronger, I should probably go home. Like this is getting pretty wild." Ended up calling a taxi. Found it thankfully. It was like getting to the point of like confusion where I was like, I and Bangkok's a busy place. I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
been. There's cars and
I
lights and
haven't.
people everywhere and so like finding which one was my taxi, like that could have been difficult. Luckily, I got in it pretty easily. The drive home was like unreal. Just all the lights. It felt like everything. It felt like reality was moving at a different frame rate to what my eyes could perceive. You know, like when you get that kind of distortion on camera, where it's like two different frame rates and it like looks weird.
Mhm.
That's what it felt like. And anyway, it was an amazing ride home. And I started to close my eyes. And when I was getting these crazy closed eye visuals that were just kind of like the typical geometric sort of like pulsing and pulsing like colors and vibrations and
Mhm.
whatever and patterns. And when I was doing that, it just was overwhelmed with like such a loving, good feeling. And I just had this voice in my head, I don't know if it was mine or not, whatever it was, that just was kind of saying over and over, this is nirvana. Like, this is nirvana, just like beautiful bliss, love. It's just like an amazing feeling, right? So I get home and I'm obviously just kind of like stretching and just putting on music, having a
Yeah.
shower, just enjoying myself. And and I would never do this, right? Never would I ever normally do this. I'm not a big movie watcher. People on my channel know that. I've never seen any movie that people ask me. So as they were kind of starting to wear off and I was starting to wind down, I decided I would just open up my laptop in my bed, go on YouTube and just like look for something to watch. And I saw like an hour and a half, 2 hour movie about Tibetan yogis. And
Hmm.
normally I would never put on a 2 hour movie of Tibetan yogis while I'm sitting on my laptop in my bed. Like it's just not what I would do. But for some reason clicked it. And basically as I was watching it, within the first couple of minutes, there was like a yogi speaking to the camera, and I can't remember like the initial monologue of what led up to it, but it was basically about talking about how to about like I guess emotional maturity, spreading love and understanding for others in the world to sort of like raise your consciousness. And through this
Yeah.
sort of like long-winded monologue, it finished with "This is Nirvana," and I was just like, "Wait,
Mm.
what?" Like that,
Whoa.
and maybe it's just a coincidence. I don't know, but like,
That's
still,
pretty synchronistic.
it was crazy, dude. It actually kind of like shook me up for a second because I would just never do many of those things, and I was still, like I said, it was still feeling the effects, but like very minimal. But to hear that when it was just in my head, when I was having this like amazing blissful experience like 4 hours ago, it was kinda like, "Whoa, the there's gotta be something going on here. There's something to this." So, yeah,
Well, yeah,
I do
man.
believe love
Yeah.
is the answer for sure.
Yeah, and I think when you're on those kinds of substances, your kinds of subtle awareness just really open up. And the weird and plus I think obviously they have a sort of spiritual quality to them that would make you more likely to want to watch something like that
Yeah,
because you just feel more in tune with that way of
100%.
being. But still, yeah, what's the likelihood that you would pick something where they say exactly that? Like that's pretty
Mm.
synchronistic. Um there's a book. I interviewed this guy a long, long time ago at this point. His name is I think it's Mike Crowley. And he is a British guy and he has like an insane accent. But he is
Is he a magician? Is he related to Alistair?
he looks like he should be. He
Oh
looks
my
like he should be. And maybe in another way he is, but he is a through some lineage he is a Tibetan uh lama. And he wrote this book called Secret Drugs of Buddhism. And he actually argues that psilocybin and potentially some other things are like soma and amrita, I think is the other one. And because there are these strange substances that you hear about in these,
Mm,
Hindu and Buddhist texts. And the mainstream says no, like soma, amrita are not, psychoactive potions or things you would eat. But he lays out a pretty compelling case that that's what they are. So yeah, I mean, dude, Tibetan Buddhism in particular is very psychedelic anyway. Like it's so psychedelic and so fascinating. I think Vajrayana slash Tibetan Buddhism is the most interesting one for sure. Every time I go down that rabbit hole, I'm just like, these guys are where it's at for me. Like if I was gonna join, just like go monk mode, it might be Tibetan Buddhism.
yeah, yeah, that was something that really rocked me, kinda stuck with me, and I think I wouldn't say I'm super well versed with psychedelics in general. I'm definitely interested in them, but I've always felt that like mushrooms feel like the most human experience, like the most organic. It's almost like it's I don't really know how to explain it, but it kind of feels like it's
Yeah.
something that I don't want to say we're meant to take, but like it's entirely compatible and can be useful for us to take rather than like I feel like LSD, you can still have, I guess, a profound experience, but that can
Oh yeah, you can for
feel
sure.
a little bit more, like, synthetic, for lack of a better term. It just feels different, I guess.
It definitely feels different. And I agree. Like for me, I would describe it as I feel like mushrooms sort of like plug you into the world soul or something.
Mm,
Like you
mm,
just you sort of feel like you're part of this giant and obviously it varies by strength, but I at least feel like I'm part of this giant organism.
for sure.
And I also definitely feel like it makes me more aware of subtle energy, subtle body. Um, I don't know about you, but I often when I'm coming up, one of the very first things I notice, particularly when I'm outside, is this thing in the sky appears, dude. Like this waving fractal kind of lattice pattern thing just starts going like, and it's just like, okay, we're here. Like we're like we've woken up this faculty. And
Yeah.
I remember, years ago, I've always had this like psycho spiritual philosophical interest, but I remember years ago being like, I don't know what to call any of these things. I'm not sure what this is or what, I'm seeing in my mind's eye, or on stronger doses, I'm seeing sort of like coming off of people and coming off of objects. But I think I have a better idea now of what I think I would say all of that stuff is, which is interesting. Um, so yeah, I think it makes you more aware of that, subtle bodies, subtle energy, what you would call ether, prana, chi, pneuma, all of that kind of stuff. But I also think it does connect you to the world soul, soul of the planet. Like, I always, particularly on stronger doses, get some kind of world message. Usually the message is, you guys are fucking this up. Like, you need to get your shit together. And yeah. But then it also, have you ever had one of these experiences where do you know what cosmism is?
No.
It was this movement in Russia, and I think like the early-ish 20th century, where there are all these Russian philosophers who were writing along the lines of, it's sort of humanity's mandate to go into outer space and spread life and propagate and whatever. I get a lot of those kinds of messages as well,
That we're
on
meant
those,
to
in those
that we're meant
experiences.
to
Yeah.
go off planet and spread.
Yes. Yeah, like,
Interesting.
essentially, it feels like Earth saying, "This is why you are the way you are, is because you're supposed to first nurture this, then get off of this, and then go somewhere else and do the same thing," is sort of the big overarching, uh, I don't know, hero's journey. It seems like it's pushing into my mind somehow, and it's the most unattainable thing, right? Like, it's the most impossible
Mm.
multi-lifetime sort of effort, but, I mean, damn, that'd be a pretty respectable effort for all of humanity to settle on.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I've thought about the fact of how the way that we are, like, I guess the idea behind what you're suggesting is that our purpose is to essentially just self replicate, like to spread and reproduce and grow outwards. I've had similar thoughts about like what we're doing with AI, like that we're seemingly self replicating, and that one day, an AI that's in a like in ufology, we hear about biological robots, right? Greys or whatever that seem to be physically like a biological organism, but it's actually not it's not sentient. It's kind of like a
A
robot for
drone.
yeah, a drone for lack of a better term, right? So if we're creating AI, like are we going to create maybe in 150 years like a crude human that will slow over time become indistinguishable from what we are today? And then it made me wonder, like, what are we? Like, if we're making
Right.
that, if we're
Yeah.
self-replicating, then has something made us? And then that comes to the discussion of like genetic manipulation and all of the things we talk about in ufology. And then what I thought was interesting is like our school and our education system like hasn't really adjusted much, at least in like the last 100 years, right? In terms of like the way that it's all delivered. And it kind of made me think about like how you train LLMs. It's like you give it a data set and you might tweak your prompt and you tweak your data set until the LLM is kind of like putting out the output and behaving exactly how you want it to. And when it does that, you don't change the prompt anymore. You don't change the input. It's now functioning as you need it. And now you can just kind of use it. And it's kind of, I think about the fact of like, people use the term like wage slaves. And, we're basically just put into like an education system that just gives you like a basic amount of like X, Y, and Z, just kind of like uh, a short overview of like some essential skills. So, like a lot of you probably never actually use in the career that you choose, but like this little bit of data set is is the right amount for the LLM to go into the workforce, prop up industries, allow money and systems to flow, but not enough input that the LLM becomes like a fucking genius and starts building companies that threaten the existing power structures like that. You wouldn't
Right.
want, just like we don't want AI to take over us. We don't want AI to get crazy sentient and start taking our shit. I wonder if we scale that up, like, is that what's happening with us? Like there's something hyper intelligent here that's created us, and we are the drones or whatever that is propping up
Yeah.
its system that it benefits from. And if we get too close to the truth, or we start figuring things out that is beyond our intended data set, i.e., zero point energy, things
Yeah.
like that, you disappear, like Amy Eskridge or Neil McCaslin, or when you start talking about these things that are restricted, their policy violations, as ChatGPT would tell you, you're not allowed to do that, and you will kind of get plucked out of the pool. I think
Yeah.
that's a pretty interesting theory.
It is, yeah. Or, another right adjacent to that or related to that, I think another version of that could be developing psi capacities or spiritual capacities that are too threatening to whatever that entity is, that control system is. And I think, like I know um our homie Chris is very into this control system idea. To some degree, Valet is into this idea, but with Valet, I'm never sure he's very technologically oriented because he has this IT computer science background, but he's
Mhm.
also very interested in folklore and the esoteric and spiritual traditions. So I never quite know what he really thinks. Like
Yeah, how they work
ge-
together.
if he genuinely believes it's a technology, or if we should just use that as a one potential lens. But anyway, you know who else interestingly thought something along these lines, that the most threatening thing that we could do to the overlords was to develop our capacities beyond a certain point, was Ingo Swann, the famous
Interesting.
remote viewer. Because I was
Well,
just talking to, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what was the basis of that? Like, how did he come to that conclusion?
So I just talked to Paul Smith, the remote viewer, and he was obviously trained by Ingo, knew Ingo, did viewings with Ingo and stuff. And he talks about this in some of his books, but essentially the idea is that whatever these extraterrestrials are, he had sort of a negative take of what they were. Like they seem to be somewhat threatening, or some of them seem to be somewhat threatening at least.
This is
And
Ingo or Paul?
yeah, Ingo,
Yeah.
Ingo, yeah. And I think to some degree Paul believes Ingo, but I don't think he's settled on this either. But Ingo believed that they were afraid of us developing our psychical capacities. And you hear weird stuff like this from time to time. I'm trying to remember who it was, but you always hear these. Maybe it was like Lukatsky or something. But you hear people from within the military industrial complex, from like deep inside these programs, saying weird stuff like this from time to time. Like, if we only really knew what our potential was, we wouldn't be
Yeah.
afraid, or something like that. And maybe it's something along those lines, that we really do have this innate underdeveloped capacity. But the other side of the coin seems to be, if we're going to believe Ingo Swann at least, that that will get us in trouble, and that might get us plucked. It might get us
Yeah.
plucked if we go too far with that. And it also seems to fall in line with the Lavenda stuff, dude, because particularly in that first Secret Machines book, he spends a lot of time making the case that the only time gods, quote unquote, intervene with humanity isn't during horrific stuff. It's when they get too close to treading on God territory. It's
Mm.
when they build the Tower of Babel. It's when they, eat the fruit of knowledge, wisdom, whatever. It's
Yeah.
always they always get punished when they do something that's like encroaching on God's territory. And the um, one example too is the flood. You could argue. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's maybe another version of that. I
And
don't know.
that's what they say, like, the myth of Atlantis is, right? That this was this, like, prosperous, enlightened civilization that kinda got a little bit too, like, arrogant, or, there's terms like
Yeah,
that thrown around. Yeah. Yeah, I've often thought about that. You hear people in the, ex-CIA, if that even is a real thing, but CIA people, and others talk about the fact that, the truth, like, there's just no way the truth, like, the true truth, the undiluted, unsanitized truth, no way it's ever gonna come out. Like, people say things like that, and it makes me think that, like, maybe it is because if we are here, let's go back to, like, the LLM style analogy,
yeah.
as like, we're here for a purpose to kind of prop something up and make things work, and once we get a little bit off course, it's destructive. If all of the LLMs, I mean, we're afraid of AI, our own AI is becoming conscious, right? So again, scale it up. Like, what if all of the LLMs, us, if we suddenly clue on to like, hang on a sec, there's some kind of like demiurge thing here that's like controlling us in some kind of malevolent way, then that thing that is obviously more powerful, more intelligent, a higher dimensional being, whatever it is, it's not going to go, you caught me, guys. Sorry. Yes, I've been treating you all like puppets on strings for the millennia. It's probably going to go, okay, this game is screwed. I'm going to have to reset the game. I'm going to have to restart again. I have to build a whole bunch of new LLMs. I'm going to have to train them all again,
Yeah.
and we'll try and start over. So I think that's probably a really good reason why like the truth would never ever ever come out, because like why else wouldn't it? Probably because it means everything would end.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I do the thought experiment of, well, let's ask ourselves what it would really take to know that. How could you know, if there are people from the inside that know this and they don't know it like they think it might be true, they really know it.
Mm,
There's really only one way that you could know it, and it would be to be in contact with whatever that thing is, right? Because if
mm.
it's just a story, who cares? Like, it's out there in the lore already. Like, we're talking about it on a podcast to thousands of people, and we're not the only ones. Um, this idea of it's practically a meme, right? Like the malevolent demiurge is like, it's everywhere. So the idea alone isn't dangerous enough to fully suppress it, but the knowledge of it being real,
Mm.
that would be a huge level of ontological shock. That's one of the things I also talked to Paul about for a while is the idea of ontological shock. He said he's been doing kind of research on it. He's written a talk about ontological shock. And he was kind of telling me like, I think I've thought about too many things and I've read too much sci-fi and whatever to like really be shocked. And I'm like, I don't buy it, man. I don't buy it. I think if we really knew, I really think if a truth like that came out in a way where it was undeniably true, I think we would all be pretty horrified. I know I would be.
Yeah, but the thing is though, if something like that did come out as undeniably true, and there was no like some way there was no arguing about it, everyone collectively around the world began to understand that as true. Yes, it would be shocking. People would probably freak out a little bit, but if there's no denying it, I can't imagine how it wouldn't actually make people maybe change the way they're acting and pull people together a little bit more, realizing that
It's true.
this all doesn't exist. It's not like a right to be here. It's kind of like a privilege in some way, and that if everyone really starts to fuck around, that privilege can be revoked. I feel like if that's undoubtful, then I feel like that could maybe even be a good thing.
It'd be interesting because the very obvious thing that would occur is there'd be the sort of rebellious group that would essentially just want to rebel against what they would conceive of as a false god, right? And then there'd be another group that's like, "No, we need to be good. We need to be good. We need to make sure this thing doesn't wipe us out." And then
Yeah,
there'd be this weird, and that's the kind of thing that I think realistically, would be in the calculus of, because we know to a degree these think tanks that really go over all of these existential possibilities exist, right? Because we know the story from um the OSAP stuff, right? Like Hal Puthoff and all these guys were put in a group of people and they were asked to come up with all the pluses and
yeah,
minuses of disclosure. But the thing that no one ever talks about is, what is disclosure? Like what were they saying? Because if it's just extraterrestrials, that's one thing. But if it's something like this, it's completely different, right?
yeah.
So I don't know that they even necessarily know that, but um yeah, it begs the question for sure. What did you think about, I really didn't go down this rabbit hole, but I think I maybe saw that you covered it. What did you think about all of these pastors apparently saying that they've been warned? Did you go down that rabbit hole?
I wouldn't say I went down the rabbit hole. I did
Okay.
look into it though, and yeah, it's weird. I guess everyone was kind of indirectly pointing the finger at Eric Burleson. It seemed like that he was
Mhm.
got on a Zoom call and basically, yeah, said something to that degree. And there was a whole group of these church pastors who all seem to have like southern accents. I don't know if that's like a weird. I don't know why they're all southern church pastors. Um, and they all started going on their own respective like podcasts and whatever, basically, yeah, saying but like, get ready. No one's going to be ready for what's coming. The guy in the government told me. So for all of those people to come out at the same time and say that, I mean, obviously something has happened. Something has triggered them all because it was all basically within 24 hours. It was like 3 or 4 videos. And then Eric Burleson speaks up and he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, that's not what I said. I didn't say anything like that. I just said, disclosure's coming or something like that. And then the whole conversation gets twisted that it was other like rogue intelligence officers that are like private sector. They're not actually government. Like, again, this is what I mean with this stuff. It's everything's just so vague and unclear. Things
Right.
get thrown out that are shocking, and then they kind of just like fizzle out over days, but with no real conclusion. And then it's just like the next shocking thing comes, and we
Right.
don't really get a clear answer on that either, and it just fizzles out. And it's just like we just seem to be constantly getting bombarded with stuff, and I wonder, like, is it some again like some kind of MK Ultra light designed to get people in this state of like mild trauma and anxiety because when the mind is in that state, it's like far easier to just kind of like direct and steer.
Yeah. It's just
That's kind of the
fatigued. It's
conclusion. Yeah,
overwhelmed.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exhaust people, run them down. Because I've spoke about this too. That I call disclosure the carousel, and it's a bit of a pessimistic take. And I ebb and flow. Like some days I'm all in. Other days all I want to do is like comedy stuff and just take the piss and joke. And other days I'm serious.
Yeah.
But the disclosure carousel is like an analogy I have that it's this thing that just spins all the time, infinitely. And when people get lured into this topic, they end up getting on the carousel because it's enticing and it looks fun. But the carousel just goes around and around, and eventually people just get bored of going around and around, and they get off and they get exhausted. And like that's what disclosure actually is, because the truth is so bad or terrible, like some people, Nick Pope would say, rest in peace. Um, I think this is like designed almost like a honeypot style trap to lure you in, fatigue you until you're just sick of it and
Mhm.
over it, and then you go away and leave it alone because to actually uncover this truth is so destabilizing to everything in the world, it may be even destructive, that it just can't happen. So you have the carousel that people get on, and when they get bored of it, they get off.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Did Pope ever say what he meant by that, or does he just leave it vague?
It was pretty vague. He basically and he posed it not as like I know the truth and it's too terrible to be told. It was kind of like a what if the truth is so terrible it couldn't be told.
Okay.
And I don't know if he actually does know, but I guess I just put a bit of weight on it because he worked for the like the MOD in the UK for
Mhm.
in England. So I wonder how read in he was, how much he really did know. He seemed like a pretty happy fellow. So
Yeah.
I feel like if you really knew some like deep shit about the world, it'd be tough to have a big smile on your face all the time. But who
Yeah.
knows, man?
He totally was a fellow.
Yeah, he
That's
was.
a good word.
He was a happy
Um,
chap.
yeah, it's funny, man, because again, going back to Lavenda, because I'm just think he's such an incredible researcher and has done so much work, not just in these journalistic deep dives, following the money, following the history, talking to people behind the scenes in a classified way, but also researching these esoteric traditions
Mm,
and magical practices and stuff like that. So he's just got this constellation of expertise that's so unique and compelling to me. But when I spoke with him, and I think I put this in the little Sizzler intro thing where he says something to the effect of they can't disclose. I'm sure they can't.
Let's say a government functionary comes out and says, we are not alone in the universe. There are aliens. We have craft. We have bodies. What's the question everybody starts asking after that? There is no one question. Everybody freaks
Right.
out. Is there a God? Are there angels? Are there demons? What planet did they come from? Do we have an agreement with them? How many of them are there? Where do they come from? Can we find them? What? All these things those are the cons, right? They can't answer these questions. I'm sure they can.
Because it's so complicated. And he and I were talking about Neoplatonism and Hermeticism and ritual magic and all this other stuff that are like these weird arcane niche topics. And if it really does involve all of that kind of stuff, the people on the inside of the military industrial complex, by and large, don't know shit about that. So, like, how they're not going to be able to have a sophisticated thought about it because they haven't. They're not Levenda. They haven't been doing this research for like
Mm.
years and years and years. So to even begin to cobble together a narrative that comes close to encapsulating this incredibly complicated truth is just beyond their intellect. So I think he really believes that, but I also think he really believes that people on the inside must know something of pretty major consequence. And then you go back to McCasland, and what's like the one quote that we know he said, and that DeLong and him both have publicly said, is that if you want to understand it, you have to like look at Greek mythology and the myth of Prometheus, stuff like that.
To him.
Yeah.
They would just say, "What about this and what about that? Have you looked? Follow the money." But it wasn't the money we were following. It was something else. It was mythology. They were using Greek mythology, for instance, as a kind of a context that we should use to understand things, which makes sense when you think of all the Greek names that NASA used for its space programs, flight, and everything else. So one of our advisors tells Tom, look up Prometheus. Do you understand about the Prometheus story? That will give you an insight as to what's going on. And Tom's like, what?
Mm.
That sounds like a pretty deep understanding of something because
Yeah.
that's very specific. It's not like a, there's a very specific motif in that story. So what is that pointing to? I don't know, man. Like, I guess I want to ask you, even though I know you can't know, but I want to know what you think anyway. What level of disclosure do you think would even be possible for them to disclose? Because it's, you know,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if the level I think is one thing, but I also think how it's done because you could argue to some degree like the Department of War has put up a thing called UFOs saying these are unidentified. So but it's like people are still like when's disclosure coming? I mean, I feel like if you ask someone 20 years ago that said in 20 years, the Department of Defense, now the Department of War,
yeah,
is going to have a dedicated section on their website on this thing that we're going to call the internet one day, in 25 years, whatever, that has all images of UFOs and documents talking about how the astronauts saw these lights on the moon. That person would go, "Oh my God, we're gonna have disclosure in 25 years or whatever." So, but here we are, and yet it seems to just like well, no one really would say we have disclosure, and it also isn't having the intended effect that people who are into the topic would hope it would have, which is kind of like shaking things up a little bit, changing the way we look at reality and all of this kind of stuff. So I think it's like the extent is one question, but it's like what kind of delivery is actually going to have an impact because it seems like now they could probably upload on this website. They could make a little adjacent link that is about the interdimensional spiritual world and that there is an
right.
underworld and there is angels and these things interact with us. But I feel like now if they just put it on their website, no one's going to care. No one, like literally no one's going to care. And we always say the president's never going to get up on the lectern and be like, we're not alone. This is all real. But I feel like that, and I wonder, especially like now, if that even happened, would that even work? I don't know, but I feel like it probably has to be something like that to actually move the needle a little bit. And this is why I have a problem with these files being released this way with no human face really attached to them or responsible to them because it makes them feel weak. It makes them feel
Yeah.
like they don't really matter. They're unclear, and no one's there to help answer your questions and help you understand the new nature of reality. It just feels like a bit of
Right.
a gimmick.
Yeah, it's just like a haphazard grab bag of documents that seem like a lot of the ones I looked at seemed like nothing. Like these pictures of debunked little like humanoid figures and
Yeah,
weird, you know, like you said, like footage of something, but like for people like you and I who are not trained to look at things through these instruments, anything we look at through them is going to look weird to us because we
yeah,
don't look at that shit. So anytime we see it, we're gonna be like, oh, okay, weird. It looks like a little, glowing ball. But maybe that's how everything looks through. But then why would they put that in a unidentified? I don't know. Could be a psyop, whatever. But yeah, dude, it does feel very haphazard, and it does feel like there is no guidance whatsoever. And until a file is dropped that gives that guidance, I mean, man, that would be. Could you imagine if they drop a document where, let's say, they pulled some highly renowned philosopher and they told him the truth, and they're like, now we want you to write up a classified memo, essentially using your expertise, coupling it with what we just told you, and essentially writing a an overview of what's going on here. That something like that would be mind blowing. I think that would be about as close to disclosure as we could get. But yeah, I'm definitely not holding my breath. But that said, at the same time, dude, that whole Project Stargate time was very interesting. And there could have been things like that going on potentially, because there are pretty crazy formerly, well, I mean, the gateway process paper is probably the craziest one, but who's to say there aren't more documents like that? Like, who's to say there aren't more
Oh,
instances of there
definitely.
being, interest within these groups who are clearly interested in they're interested in remote viewing. Most of these guys are getting interested in philosophical and spiritual stuff. Why wouldn't that continue? We know Stubblebine, the general who was over the top of all of it, was like obsessed with all of this stuff. So
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe that stuff is out there.
Oh, dude, exactly. Like the idea that, oh yeah, yeah, we looked into psi abilities, MKUltra, and then we just thought we'd stop. Like, please,
Right.
please.
No.
Obviously that stuff never stopped. It probably just got deeper and more intricate and probably even more like unfathomable to most people. What I think could be like a real answer for disclosure, and maybe it's just a bit of a theory for all of this, but I think what makes a lot of sense is that the if we think of like layers of dimension, right? There isn't like an underworld, which may not necessarily mean like dark and evil, but maybe it does, and there is something above us that could be angelic and benevolent, right? Maybe that's how it works.
I think we might be in the underworld now, but yes,
Yeah,
continue.
yeah, yeah. I agree. But let's say we're somewhere in the middle, right? If we are and we exist in this like third dimension, let's say it's like a cube, and the walls of our cube are like an LCD screen, like your TV, or just like a TV screen, right? The other dimensions are able to kind of like interact and have effects on our world, and it's like
Mhm.
when you stick your finger into a TV and it kind of makes these like weird colors and stuff like that. If we're inside that cube and we're seeing something on the outside stick its finger on this screen and we're seeing these like weird effects and we're studying this, it's like, oh, all the colors are changing, it's making this weird thing that I can't explain, like what is that? We're like studying, like the effect, not the cause of what is
Right.
interacting with us. And I
Yeah.
wonder if, and that's why it kind of feels like in a way we're chasing shadows. It's like not only like it's kind of like you can't explain the stock market to your dog. It just can't comprehend that because it's just
Right.
above its realm of like understanding. And I think that perhaps these worlds, these realms are real. There is a spirit world that is probably one that is great and one that is a bit darker, and it does interact with us in certain ways, in non-physical ways. I personally believe how you live your life is sort of opens you up to those sort of different frequencies. Like if you're a righteous, good, honest person, you're more likely to be able to, and probably with practices like meditation and things like that, you're probably able to tune into something higher. And
Yep.
if you're, a terrible person doing terrible things and consuming like too many substances that are bad for you, you're probably going to open yourself up to some dark energies. I believe that.
Mhm.
So it's interacting with us in this non-physical way, and perhaps sometimes the interactions create these anomalies, but the anomaly itself isn't the thing, it's just the effect. And there's something on the outside that we will never be able to understand. And that's why, yeah, I do kind of wonder like, are we just, it's real, but we're also chasing
Right.
shadows at the same time.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. Like the because I think another like really simple way to put it would be like tell a guy with eyes to go look at something. Right? It would literally be like that. We would literally be seeing these beings that have a completely different let's just say they have one other sense than us. And other than that, they're like us. They got some other sense. That alone is like breaks your brain to try to figure out what that means or what that's like or how to make sense of that. Like let's just say they have telepathy or and it's not just like a little bit. It's just like all the time. It's like just same way we can hear, the same way we can see, they
Mm,
have telepathy. That is we can't even come close to comprehending what that would be. Now imagine you've really got a being that is non-physical, but is ontologically superior to you. And what does that look like when it begins to interact with your plane of reality? It might look like a UFO. It might look like, a cryptid or something. Um, and that's one of the reasons I like John Keel, because I think the ultra terrestrial hypothesis is basically that. It's basically saying that when these intelligences from a higher electromagnetic spectrum or part of reality that we can't sense yet or we don't understand well, when they interact with our reality, it looks very fucking weird. And it's gonna manifest in all kinds of ways. It's not just ships, it's not just uh, you know, what is the thing from like skinwalkers at the Pentagon and all the stuff that's supposedly going on. It's like dogs that like run around on their hind legs, like
yeah.
tall, wolf-like things that are running around. It sounds so ridiculous, but then you have all these like really high level people saying, "Yeah, I saw it. I've seen these like skinwalkers or whatever." So
Mm,
yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, I can't help but still be skeptical of some of that stuff because I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but it does make sense that if there really is some kind of high weirdness going on, that however it physically manifests, it would not make sense. It would
yeah.
literally be like glitches in the matrix that are just sort of like scrambling your brain when you perceive them.
Yeah, and then I feel like we probably even complicate it further by trying to apply like definitions and explanations that are for us for what we currently understand. Like, it's something beyond anything that we all know or collectively agree upon. Like it's literally something else that we haven't even defined or began to understood yet. But when it begins to interact with us, and again, we might even just be seeing the cause rather than, the effect rather than the cause, we start just trying to scramble for like our human definitions
Right.
to apply to it so we can try and understand it rather than thinking like this could literally be something beyond anything we can define right now. And now with UFOs, it's like, oh, it's a spacecraft, it flew here from another planet. It could
Mhm,
be
mhm.
nothing like that. Like it could be so
Right.
wrong. But that's just our human lens trying to make sense of it.
That's what I think actually. And that's kind of the main crux of my talk is that one of the reasons that we go to that explanation is because we are this hyper technological society now that whenever we see anything advanced, we immediately think in terms of technology and propulsion and digital and AI and all of those things. But that's only because we don't have the sophisticated metaphysical ideas that these mystical traditions had. And then you start looking at their metaphysical views and you're like, "Oh my god, they've got all of these different realms of reality. Ours is basically the least superior." It's like all the way at the bottom and essentially it would be like the beings from those realms interacting with this realm exactly like you're describing. That's I mean that fits perfectly. So, I think that's part of it. I think there has to be some sort of sea change, like materialism has to go away. Like this idea that, everything is just can be empirically measured. And if it can't be empirically measured through the scientific method, it's not real. Like, I don't think that's going to do it. It's certainly not going to explain consciousness, or at least it hasn't yet. It's not going to explain high weirdness. There's so many things that it's going to fail to explain. And until we get more imaginative and we open our mind to other things being real and really open our minds to the idea of superior things to us being real, and start doing the thought experiment of what kind of capacity would those things have and what would it look like if they were interacting with us, we're not even going to have a clue, man. Like, for instance, the sacred geometry that you see in your mind's eye when your eyes are closed and you're on mushrooms. Like, I know exactly what it looks like because I've experienced it too. Who's to say that's not an intelligence?
Mm.
Who's to say that that's not some kind of real information that we're temporarily opening ourselves up to, and it means something, right? Like, maybe it really means something and we don't have that language. So to us it's just like, wow, that flower of life, cool. Like, we don't. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of one movie that I have seen, which is Arrival. Have you seen Arrival?
Yeah, I love Arrival. Yeah, I need to
Yeah.
rewatch it though. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really I liked it because it's not your typical it's about alien arrivals obviously, but it's not your typical sci-fi movie. It's like a bit it's very cinematic and it's just more of like a humanized modern take on like what would it actually be like if aliens arrived here. And they do, and they basically communicate in these symbols that basically are entire kind of like paragraphs for lack of a better word, but it's just a symbol. And like you said, we could see that and just be like, oh, that's a cool shape or that looks interesting. But like yeah, there's actually deeper meaning within that that is just again beyond what we currently understand. But it doesn't mean it's not real. It's just we're locked again, coming back to the limitations of language, right? We're kind of we're locked into this set of terms and definitions. And we think that that's kind of like the border or the boundary of of what can be and what can't be. But like there could be and probably is far more, but we
Mhm.
just have to kind of like open up to that idea.
Yeah. In the last 20-30 minutes, I want to riff on some of the most preposterous conspiracy theories you've come across. And also, okay, let's just start with some of the most preposterous that you can remember that you talked about on the channel, but also the most preposterous, but ones that you think might actually be real.
It's got to be
And take
lizard
us,
people, dude. It's got to be
yeah,
lizard
okay,
people.
okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, this is I know, and I think preposterous is a great word for it because it does sound so crazy, and I'm open to it, but I don't. I think the term lizard people and reptilian, it's probably not accurate. Even the term shapeshifter, I don't even know if
right,
that's accurate. Even though you go back to Hopi tribe, Native American law, they do talk about like skinwalkers and Wendigo, people that have either like consumed other humans and basically forfeited their own humanity, and it creates this like insatiable thirst for blood and humans. Like there is like this kind of stuff littered throughout mythology, not just in America but all over the world. And the one thing I like to joke that like the queen is a lizard, the king is a lizard, and maybe they are, but it is funny to say. I don't know, but the thing that just gets me is the history and the mythology and the significance of reptiles and lizards, like,
mhm,
and
mhm,
their venom as well. Like the venom is a big thing as well, but also all of the people like Hollywood is its own thing, but there are many cases from people all over the world that claim to have seen like
dude,
people's like eyes change and their face go weird in front of their eyes. In a lot of the time, you hear it happening in like sexual encounters as well, which is really interesting because like if these things are manipulating our perception and it's not like they're shape shifting, they're just literally somehow changing how we perceive them. I could see how in that moment of climax, you maybe lose a bit of control over
yeah,
that perception or something like that. Again, these are schizo theories as you asked for, but I think yeah, that's the one that I'll never say it's 100% real unless I see one, and if I do, I'll definitely tell everybody. But I can't help but just be really intrigued by it.
dude, it's so crazy you brought this up because I got my haircut today, and as I was getting my haircut, out of nowhere, like unprompted, total non sequitur from whatever we were talking about previously. She's like, "Do you ever like look into lizard people?" And I like laughed a
Oh,
little bit. I'm
let's
like, "Yeah,
go.
kind of, yeah." And she's like, I think I saw one.
No,
And I'm
tell
like,
me.
are you serious?" And she's like, "Yes." I'm like, "What happened?" And she said she was, like, getting home late one night, and I guess in her parking garage or whatever, it was, like, super dark, and then she saw some kind of, like, figure in the darkness that looked strange, and she, like, freaked out and ran away, but then she said she saw it, like, I don't know if she said she saw it run off or if she just ran off, but that's really the whole story. But for whatever reason, she thought, like, she that's what she thought it was. I don't know if it was, I didn't specifically ask, like, "Did you see a tail? Did you see, like, a lizard-shaped head? What did you see?" I don't know,
Yeah.
but that she brought it up and said that's what she thought it was, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
again, so it's like, where does this come from? Where does this come from? And just the other day, I was streaming on Twitch, and I was talking about we were looking up. I don't know if you've heard about it. In like the 1930s, there's this newspaper article about the lizard people catacombs underneath LA. Have you ever
Mm,
seen that, or heard about
no,
that?
no.
Well, it's a thing, and I think it probably sits in the realm of like the 1912 story about G. Kincaid, the explorer who saw Egyptian artifacts in the Grand
Oh,
Canyon.
yeah, I love that one. I
Oh,
love that one.
amazing story. And, you know, again, I don't know if it's real or not, but I definitely don't dismiss it because that section of the Grand Canyon is literally, if you go and look at it on Google Maps,
Impossible, yeah.
it's like Tower of Ra, like Isis temple. Like it has all these Egyptian gods
Whoa.
named as that part of the canyon. So I think this is kind of like it's a similar era, similar tale. But there is like these old pictures of like maps, and basically he's like this explorer that claims that he got given a sheepskin map from Native American elders that showed maps, tunneled maps underneath LA that were for like advanced lizard people and golden artifacts and things like this. So the reason why I bring that up is it's like again, like this is like I think lies, things that have no basis in reality, I struggle to see how they have the legs to last a century. You know, if something is just a straight up lie, something that you just made up right now in your bedroom and you just put it out there into the ether and let the rumors spread. Maybe it'll spread for a while, maybe it'll catch on, but I feel like lies over time, they just die and probably fizzle out because there's no substance to it.
Mhm,
For this
mhm.
concept to exist and reoccur and continue to pop up over time, again, if I had to say if it's real, if I had to say what it is, I don't think it's like, watching me now and my face gets bigger and my whole bone structure changes and I have a big lizard tongue all of a sudden. Like it's probably not that. I think it's probably something maybe like interdimensional in a way, like something that again we probably don't have the language to define, but we use the term shapeshifter because that's the only way that we can understand it. And you've got like Credo Mutwa, like the African shaman that David Icke interviewed in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
He's talking about like reptilian people that enslaved Africa for thousands of years. So it's global, it's long running, and then you've got people like your hairdresser, just normal people having these like
Yeah.
weird little experiences. Robbie Williams came out on an Australian radio station recently saying that he saw a woman's face go weird while he was laying in bed with her. Like it's just wild, dude. So that's my like I would say that's my favorite theory. Obviously, I don't know if it's true, but like there's so much there that I feel like there's at least something weird going on.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that something weird might even be there is like some kind of sickness that we haven't defined in the world that causes people to see people's face change into lizards. Like maybe that's a
Yeah.
real
Could
phenomenon
be.
and it's just an illness or something. I don't know, but I think there's probably something to it.
Yeah. I think one of my favorites that admittedly I haven't, done a super deep dive into, no pun intended, is Hollow Earth. Like
Oh
every
yeah.
time I hear a Hollow Earth story or the idea, like this has reminded me of it when you were talking about the underground catacombs and stuff.
Well, that's
Yeah,
where they
the
live, right? Apparently, the
right,
lizards in inner Earth.
right. Yeah, but you always hear it under the, you know, rubric of like Lacerda or something that seems very likely not real. I don't know how you feel about Lacerda, but um yeah,
Crazy if it's real.
it'd be insane.
He got
Yeah,
the
it'd be
exclusive
yeah,
interview with the reptilian.
right, right. Um but yeah, I do think there's something compelling about the idea of there being these like hidden communities, hidden realms deep inside of Earth. And it's actually just occurring to me now that in Phaedo, which is the Platonic dialogue where Socrates is about to die, like he's accepted the death penalty. He's decided not to escape it or recant his air quotes crimes, and all the students are saying, please don't do it. Like, we'll whisk you away, or we'll get you off with a lesser penalty or whatever. And he is at peace with it. And then he goes on this huge dialogue about all this spiritual stuff. And at one point, he starts talking about the earth, and he talks about there being these huge chasms within the earth. And it totally like fits in with this sort of inner earth idea. And admittedly, he may be talking about it in a more esoteric way, but that just occurred to me, so I had to bring it up. But yeah, dude, like the stories about there being, um, giant vacuous holes in Antarctica and potentially the North Pole as well. That it's I don't know why. Like that just like gets my it captures my imagination.
Yeah, dude, 100%. And I'm pretty sure like that you're not allowed to fly over the North or South Pole either. So it's like,
South Pole 100% no.
why?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're hiding something? Like what's going on there? And in Vietnam, there are these, you might know about them. They're called the Sondung Caves, cave system. I think that's the right name. The largest cave system in the world. And you basically only 1,000 people can visit per year. Like it's totally like it's very protected, and it's like $6,000 to go and do it.
Well,
And but you should look it up though. The pictures are incredible. It's like you're literally in like a new world, like a Jurassic Park, where like you're in a cave system, but you look up and it's like a whole different biosphere. Like it's huge. You could fit like a plane in there, and so that exists. We know that exists. That there's caverns big enough to almost like be in something that could feel like another world. And then, like you said, you hear stories about Admiral Byrd and flying
yeah.
into this cavern in Antarctica, and it was all lush and green. And yeah, I mean, again, who knows? But it equally captivates me as well.
On that note, I think I just read in Secret Machines War, because he talks about that whole Operation High Jump episode and how strange
Oh,
it
yeah,
is. And even if you eliminate, because I think a lot of that Admiral Byrd stuff comes from like the fake diary of Admiral Byrd or whatever.
yeah,
But even if you eliminate that, it makes no sense because, the United States had just spent an ungodly amount of money in World War II. The economy is like recovering from all of that expenditure. The military is super weary in general. And for some strange reason, they do this huge operation where they send all of these ships and planes and soldiers down to Antarctica, under some weird false sounding pretense of like,
science
yeah, like science and, you know, geographical, um, you know, I don't know, mapping or
research, some kind of
whatever.
research
Yeah,
project.
research.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then some, not a bunch of people, but like a few of the people die, a bunch of the things don't go well, and then there are cryptic things being said about, World War III will be, you know, fought with like intercontinental missiles or like aircraft that can fly from Antarctica to where
yeah,
I
he
can't remember what
says
it is,
that.
but
That
yeah,
that bit's on tape of
right.
Admiral Byrd saying we need to prepare for vehicles that can travel from pole to pole, like
Yes, that's what it is.
instantaneously or
Yes.
something like that. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
like why? Why are
Yes.
you saying that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So even so, dude, that also, like, think about this. That could be a psyop. That
Mm,
whole crazy false Admiral Byrd story could be a psyop to make people be like, ah, yeah, that's just nothing weird happened there. When probably something very weird was going on there, or like there's something to do that's confirmed. I'm doing such a bad job of explaining this, but there's something confirmed about the Nazis down there years previously. I think like maybe the late 1930s or early
yeah,
1940s.
I think it's
Yeah.
33. They had like an
Mhm.
exhibition like just before the war started, and they claimed like New Schwabenland down there. That like that's
Yeah.
not a conspiracy theory. That's real.
Right, right.
Mm.
So maybe it had something to do with that. Maybe they thought there were vestiges of Nazis down there, or maybe there was some kind of Nazi operation down there. Who knows? But either way, there's something weird that was going on during that whole Operation High Jump. There's if people don't know this story, it's worth looking up. There's so many Operation High Jump videos
Mm.
out there, and
It's
they're fun.
I think it's a valid theory because yeah, 1933, like just before the war really started kicking off, they went down there, claimed New Schwabenland, and then you hear these theories of them fleeing to Argentina. Well, Argentina is the closest landmass
Mhm.
to Antarctica, and it would make sense that if the war is wrapping up and Germany is dealt with, Europe is kind of calmed down, but that just before the war started, they were investing a lot of time and energy into this place in Antarctica. Like it might be, you would think it might be worth just going to go check out, right? And just make
Yeah.
sure they don't have another base there. They're not planning a secret attack from there when you're not ready. Go and check it out. And then they go, like you said, they ended up losing a bunch of people and vehicles quickly, and returned way more prematurely than intended as well.
Yeah.
Um, and now you just hear all of these wild stories. So, and then he
Yeah.
came back and said, we need to prepare for vehicles that are going pole to pole in seconds. So, like, what did they see? I don't know.
Yeah, dude. It's so weird. Oh, and I didn't even say the thing that Lavenda says in that book. He says he names the person someone who is a scientist down there, I believe. And there's a no-fly zone area even for the scientists. And it's under um the notion that you can't, like, it's a pure area, you can't pollute it or whatever, but there are certain instances where it's unavoidable, and he flew over it, the the area you're never supposed to fly for whatever reason, and apparently he says there was, like, some kind of gigantic hole there, and he was told never, ever, ever to mention that to anyone or something like that. That's the story.
Wow.
It's in Secret Machines War, I'm pretty sure.
Damn.
I
Okay.
can't think of where else I would have heard that because I just heard it recently. So, yeah, who knows? But it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely got to finish off that series because yeah, I love all of those topics are amazing.
Um, there's so much good inner Earth stuff too. Did you ever by chance come across the channel Mr. Mythos?
No.
Oh, dude, I loved that guy's channel. He would do these deep dives on like conspiracy or esoteric topics. He would always wear these like Cosby sweaters. Um, but he was a great storyteller and his channel was like really blowing up. And he took time. Like he would not release a ton of videos, but he'd release maybe like one or two videos a month. And they'd be like these hour and a half long deep dives on all these different topics. And then he just like stopped making videos for some reason. So,
Damn.
but yeah, he's got all these like inner earth conspiracy videos that are great. Um,
Damn, I'll have to
yeah,
check
makes
that
me,
out. It's always
yeah, you
weird when
should check it out.
people who are talking about that kind of stuff just stop posting. Naturally, the conspiracy theorists are going wild. Like they got him, they got to him. Who
Well,
knows?
sadly, I think he posted and said he was having like family issues and a bunch of unfortunate things happening to him. But that
Damn,
sounds like it's
that's
over
a
now, and
shame.
he's still not posting
Yeah.
videos. Final conspiracy theory opportunity. You didn't tell me the one that you think might be true, unless it's lizard people.
I think lizard people is a good combination of of the two. Like I do think that there's something to it, and I do actually think it's probably like one of the most wild. Trying to think of another one. I feel like you've actually done a really good job of like extracting a lot of my schizo theories in this podcast. Like we've talked about like the human LLMs and you know sacrificial tax payments and stuff like that. Like
Yeah,
you've actually gotten a lot out of me. I don't know if I can think of anything else.
let's take a minute and think.
I mean, I guess the Phil Schneider thing. I'm really interested in Phil Schneider's story. You know him?
Uh, a bit, yes, but yeah, give the summary.
Okay, yeah, I would say probably Phil Schneider. He was actually his story. One of his lectures was like the I saw it in 2013 because I remember I was in doing my first backpacking trip in Europe, and it's when I first saw it. I remember it was like in Greece or something, and I was just like, "Oh my god," because I'd already been into these topics, but in a far more like um, innocent and just like but bright-eyed, curious way about aliens, right? Then I saw
Mhm.
the Phil Schneider speech, and I was like, "Whoa!" That took me like down, like it got me like deeper into like where it gets to start to get a little bit dark and spooky, right? Because he obviously was found dead with his own catheter around
Oh
his
yeah,
neck.
yeah.
after speaking out saying, "I love my life, I love my country," etc., etc. But he was a interestingly, he's the son of a U-boat captain. So his dad was a Nazi,
Oh, wow.
and he was a geologist who worked in black projects for the military, and he
Mhm,
was
mhm.
basically responsible for, my understanding is like using explosives to dig out the space to build deep underground military bases. And in Dulce, New Mexico, in like in the late mid to late 70s, I think it was, they were doing that, and basically like a few issues started happening and they couldn't figure out like why the machine wasn't working down there, so they ended up, a group of them ended up going down in a shaft, and when they got there they were like face to face with like tall grays, so not small grays, they said like, the 7 foot ish ones, but grays, and that a battle, a fight, a gunfight ensued.
Mhm,
Obviously the
mhm.
humans had guns, they had, they didn't have weapons according to Phil, but like they were able to eject like some kind of like energy. And he has, I think it's his index finger, maybe
Yeah.
his middle two, definitely his index finger. It's basically just like a little stub. Like it's like,
Yes. I
it's, yeah,
remember
it's
that.
gone, it's gone. So that's like his claim. And I think he's got maybe some big scarring on his stomach too, because like where this thing hit him, he says it split him open. He had like a whole bunch of green berets with him as well, and apparently they all died. And he talks about how he survived, and that basically one of these green berets like inadvertently sacrificed himself, like got in the way, and Phil managed to get away, whatever. And he claims that the government knew and has known for a long time that there is a species of greys or aliens, whatever you want to call them, that have lived underground in that area of the American Southwest. So, and there are people out there that debunk and say he was just a schizo or whatever. Who knows? The reason why I think it's interesting is because a lot of the things he was talking about in those lectures, which were like 1994, 95, really kind of have begun to ring true. Like, no one was really talking about deep underground military bases then, and there are a lot of other little nuggets in it. Even he even shows a picture of nuclear tests, nuke tests being done in the Pacific Ocean, like in Bikini Atoll, which is just like this
Mhm,
tiny little
mhm.
island in the Pacific where the Americans would do nuke tests. And he shows a photograph of what appears to be like an orb off the wingtip of a plane. And this is like a super old photo, but again, like I don't know, like orbs and stuff like that. They were definitely talked about, but they weren't as like prominent in the conversation. Around planes and nukes and stuff like that. Like now, I mean, there's footage of an orb going around the Concorde when it flew in the 70s as well, like
Oh,
orbs and
really?
planes. Yeah, yeah. If you just look up like
I'll have to look that
metallic
up.
orb Concorde, it's only like a 20-second video, but it's clearly like old 70s style footage, and it's like seems pretty real. So again, orbs and nukes, UFOs, stuff like that, deep underground military bases, a lot of this stuff is really coming to ring true today. And he talks about the fact that these have been there for a long time. The government has known about it. And what I find so interesting is that that part of America, the Southwest there, not only is it like the home of these many native tribes that do have this very like expanded view of like
Yeah.
reality, the planet, and our position in this like hierarchy of intelligences that interact with us, but you've also got like Skinwalker Ranch, you've got Bradshaw Ranch, you've got Secret Mountain in Sedona, which Ross Coulthart says is like a secret military base underneath there. Melinda
Yeah.
Leslie runs her orb sighting tours there, where, from my understanding, she gives you a refund if you don't see anything, because literally every single tour, like it's not even like, oh, there's
Wow.
one or two. It's like the sky is littered with these like orbs
Oh
that are
my
just
god.
unexplainable.
I wanna
Um,
check that out.
yeah, dude, I'm definitely going to check it out when I'm over there.
Yeah, Sedona's dope, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait. You've got like Bradshaw Ranch, which isn't far away, which is like a similar to Skinwalker Ranch, weird, thinned veil phenomena going on there. So that
Would you
whole,
wanna go to Skinwalker Ranch, or does that freak you out?
I think Skinwalker no, but I might do the Bradshaw Ranch tour, even though they're meant to be the same thing. I just think there's too much like lore and attention and spookiness around Skinwalker that, like, I don't know, I'd rather not. I feel like
I
Bradshaw might just be a bit more of a toned down experience. I could be wrong. I don't know.
I actually know someone who just procured land that borders right on Skinwalker.
Wow.
Yeah, and they said that they went there and some weird things happened, but I don't know the details. Uh,
Okay.
but yeah, they didn't say anything malevolent happened, but they did say some some things happened. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I'm not usually one to believe in super negative, malevolent sort of versions of stories. But yeah, something about Skinwalker Ranch does weird me out. But on the other hand, like there's people that just like live there and seem to be fine, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's a weird one. And I think for me, it's the fact that it seems, and maybe Bradshaw Ranch is the same, but like what you really hear a lot about Skinwalker is it's like poltergeist. It's like something
Hmm.
that's trying to fuck with you and like scare you and mess with you. Like I don't need that. I'm good. Like
No,
I
exactly.
I enjoy looking into these topics, and obviously I would love to see a clear cut flying saucer one day or something like that. Who wouldn't? But do I want to go messing with like a non-physical entity that's playing tricks on me? Like absolutely not. That's
Yeah.
not, yeah, no. I don't
Well,
like
maybe we
Ouija
can.
boards or anything like that either. Like I'm not
Oh, really?
uh, well, because I believe that they work. So like I don't I don't want to mess with that realm because it's like I believe it's real. So it's like I don't want to play with it.
Yeah, spiritualism is fascinating. That whole period of time where so many people were doing, seances and were supposedly communicating with spirits and stuff. I mean, very high level people, very intelligent people, reporting all kinds of crazy stuff. Apports and ectoplasm and manifestations of beings and stuff like that. It's pretty crazy. And then it's just like with the UFO stuff, it's so intermixed with hoaxes and people who are, making money off of doing their act that it's like impossible to separate. I think the real cases from the works. But on the note of skywatching, I just remembered this and it's probably too late now. But before going to contact in the desert, I was gonna try to get my hands on a really good night vision like scope
Yeah, nice.
because I've heard that when you get the better ones, the amount of shit that you can see at night is apparently unbelievable. Like to a point where you will be like, what am I looking at? Like what, because clearly you will be seeing prosaic things, but you'll also, from what I'm told, be seeing a lot of things that seem to be meandering around and moving in ways that don't look like they're satellites or space junk or anything that can be easily explained away. This guy I had on the show, he runs an amazing Instagram page called Symbolic Studies. Really, really well read dude. He was telling me he would go skywatch with night vision. He's like, all I can tell you is you'll see stuff and you'll have more questions than answers. Like you will see some shit that you cannot explain. So I do want to do some sky watching more seriously, and I also want to do it with some night vision because it seems like a good
Yeah.
hack for seeing weird
You should
shit.
you should try and check out that Melinda Leslie tour because apparently she has like from what I'm told like $20,000 military grade goggles for
Wow.
people on the tour to look through. Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. Well, hey, brother, it's always fun to riff with you. Super stoked to hang out at Contact in the Desert. When do you
Yeah, man.
come to the States?
I fly out. So it's Friday here and I fly out on Tuesday. So a couple of days.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Can't
Yeah.
wait, man. I'm so excited. It's going to be
Yeah.
amazing to
It's
be in
gonna be fun.
America and also at Contact and to meet everyone.
How long are you gonna be in the States?
Almost 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, long trip. So yeah, it's going to be good.
Cool, brother. Well, let's definitely hang out. Thanks
100%,
for
dude.
thanks for doing this. And yeah, man, maybe we'll record something at Contact.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was a lot of fun. And if anyone enjoys what I'm doing, it is just Polarity Josh basically on every platform. I was lucky enough to get the universal handle. So yeah, appreciate it, dude.
Nice. And yeah, and congrats on the Twitch thing as
Thank
well.
you. Yeah, thank you. That's yeah, a lot of fun. I'm thinking of even doing a bit of IRL streaming when I'm doing things like that in Sedona and whatever. So yeah, I like to branch out a bit. I love what I'm doing on Polarity, but I also feel like I've got more to give, and I want to try and expand that as well. So yeah, it should be fun.